Alright, so today I thought I'd do something a little bit different where I'd take you along with me in Spline and we just build something. I don't know if I'm going to build yet, but let's just try it out. So first I'm going to make a new file and let's just try something here. Let's change the background here. Let's pan around. Let's delete the main rectangle. Let's go into perspective mode. And first thing what I'll usually do is I'll ask myself, like, what wants to be here right now? Like, what do I want to make on the screen? What would be cool if I actually like made it right now? And so I've been kind of having this idea recently of this type of I don't know, like an ethereal runestone looking sacred geometry jewelry thing. And so let's try to add something like this where we add an eclipse, and let's go put in the position right here. Bang bang. And let's extrude this up a little bit so you can see we're adding a little bit more thickness to that, which is great. And then let's add a ring to it. Looks about good. And let's choose a material. Now Spline recently added in a bunch of materials here. I mean, you can basically like scroll forever and you'll find something. And so I'm looking for something more metally, and let's just kind of go down to they even have a metal section here they recently added. So it's kind of interesting. Let's try something else out. Let's try it's closer to what I had in mind. Closer. Yeah, let's try this actually. It's pretty cool. So now that we got this, let's do something where we go to these edges here and let's bevel this out on the side. You can see what that does basically is kind of add that roundness to that side. Let's add a little bit more smoothness to it. And let's change these sides so that it's a little bit more cleaner. And there we go. That's a pretty good starting point as far as I can tell. And so we're choosing this metal colorful pattern 2, and we're on this single eclipse. Now the shape idea that I had was utilizing multiple of these eclipses. So let's take this one that we got and let's press Control D and duplicate this one. And let's just drag it along its same axis, which would be right about here. And let's resize this one down just a little bit so that that fits the way it's supposed to. And there we go. That's looking pretty cool to me. You can kind of see we got this little like glitch pattern here. That's what happens when you have things exactly on the same plane. It kind of can't decide, you know, which side you're actually trying to render on. So there we go. Let's do that. So there we go. That looks pretty good. Now we got these two eclipses here. And let's group those. And let's try to do something a little bit different here where we'll take this group we just made. We'll just call this group 2. Let's duplicate this. And let's do something where we will change this around like this. So there we go. We'll just do something like that. That's pretty cool actually. You can kind of see we got that little glitch problem. So we'll just kind of bring that down a little bit there. And that just works. So now we got just a very simple pattern. And this is kind of cool. Maybe we'll actually return back to what this is later on. And I'll show you a little bit more on how you can clone this and do something interesting there. So I'm actually going to take all of this right here and let's copy that. And Spline now recently added in this new feature where you can add multiple scenes all in one project file. So if we just click the plus button and then basically pop that in there, you can now see we're in scene number 2, and we're just on scene number 1. And so I mean that's honestly just like the craziest thing that they did that. But anyways, we'll keep that right there, and we'll go back to scene 1 where we have this thing, and we got 2 directional lights here. We don't need that. So right here we got this object. but I kind of had an idea to make this a bit more three-dimensional. And so let's actually take these groups that we just made here and make another group. Let's call this one 4. And let's duplicate that group and do something like this. So now we kind of got that sort of effect going on. You see, we got these edges here that are kind of coming in like a square. It's even kind of like cool looking actually, but let's try to size it up a little bit more on that side. Right there, that's pretty cool. And now, you guessed it, we're going to duplicate that on this side as well, 90 degrees. And then, there we go. We got like a pretty cool looking thing here. And honestly, it's pretty crazy actually. And so we got these 3 groups, and let's make that all into one big group. I'm really about the groups, if you can tell. And so this is already pretty cool. I'm going to take this and I'm going to add in another scene where I just import that just as that is, because we may do something with that later. And so there we go. We got scene number 3, scene number 2, scene number 1. And so the first thing that we'll do here is I just want to add a camera to this. And let's just change the position of this to 0, 0. Have the rotation be 0, just everything. Let's just zero it all out. And the cool thing is you can see with this basically is that you basically can drag this and have this little view down here which shows the camera view of it. So let's bring that. Let's also take this object and zero this one out too. So let's put that right there, change it. So now when we go back to this camera down here, and you can even drag this too, you can zoom in and out of this, and you can see it directly goes to the exact middle of what it is, because it's pointing exactly at zeros. So let's do, I think we have to do that a little bit. There. Okay, now that we got the camera set, when we go to play this, we can play this using our camera that we just made, and we'll just press play. And so now you can see that we have it basically set there, and we can do all sorts of fun stuff. But what I had an idea for is to do something where we'll actually spin this around in the camera. So let's do a state where we're taking the base state and we're rotating this 360 degrees. And you can see here when we have these numbers here, we're starting at the base state of the rotation 0 on all axes, but just on the y-axis we're changing to 360. And so we'll apply an event to this where it's going to start a transition on this group, and it's going to start from its current state, or you could put this at the base state since it's the first one. And we're going to transition to the second state, and we're going to rotate this around 30 seconds. Let's put a linear loop on it, and let's make sure that it repeats infinitely. And so now when we press this play button, this is just going to spin around, and it will just keep on spinning around as long as the window is open. So there's that. Now this material, it's not really exactly what I was looking for, and I think we can do better. And so we'll go back into this material that we have here with these ellipses, or these ellipses rather, and then we can look at this and remember how we have these materials. Well, we can redrag the order of these things and do a bunch of different stuff where we can basically change this thing around and like just really make this quite different. So like I said before, I'll usually take a pre-made set of materials that already are made from the Spline team, and I'll just kind of rehash it, make it a little bit different, change it around to what I want. And so I had an idea here to make like a type of stony sort of a thing. And so let's do, I don't want to upload an image per se. I want to generate something. Let's try something like a rock sort of a vibe. That's not quite right. Let's actually try something called Stone. Let's try stone in there. Hey, that's actually pretty good. That's actually what I was sort of looking for. Now, let's do one more thing here. But before we do that, you see how this sort of matches this, where it's kind of a little bit goofy on all these edges right here? You see how the picture is relatively normal, but when it comes to this plane, it's sort of whack. So what you can do with that, and you'll usually find when that's happening on any of your objects, you have to adjust this projection. So I think for this circle sphere with the extrude, we have to make it a triplanar. Yeah, so there you can see it's the same image, but then how you project it onto the image can drastically change what is that, you're basically doing. And so there we have that, and we can also change the scale of it as well. Like, so it's that scale, but we can change it to be some like 2 where we scale it up a little bit larger. But I kind of even like the scale as where it's at. I mean, it looks pretty good. Now, what you have to remember about these materials is that if we have an image at 100% opacity as the top layer, all other materials down below are not going to be rendered properly, right? So if you just drag this and drag it a little bit differently, you'll see what happens at each level of how when you like arrange the materials. So I kind of had an idea here to replace it as this little color here. And so let's try something like that. But that's not quite what we're looking for. Maybe we'll change something around a little bit later, but there we have that. And another cool thing that Spline recently just added in was this thing where you can add a bump map. And so you probably don't know what this is yet, but I'll tell you now. You see how this image, it still looks relatively flat here on the material? Well, you can basically add this thing, it's called a bump map, and it basically adds an AI, ML type of a texture effect over top of the material to give it a more like 3D rough feel. And so when you click this, you'll see how it sort of adds a little bit extra layer of depthness to the image. It looks a little bit more like a rocky material. And so it will do that with any image that you put it on. And so that actually looks pretty good, just the way that that is. And I think we're actually gonna change that image to be, we're gonna scale the image up a little bit more so it's just a little bit bigger. Yep. And then we have this rainbow on top, which that may be the causation of the issue, or we have this noise here, which we'll do something like that. Another thing I want to add to this, before we even do any of that, is I want to add a little bit of Fresnel to this. Now, Fresnel is probably my favorite material that you can basically add because it sort of just like makes the image glow. And so let's do something where you do some more like a dark bluish sort of vibe. And then that matte cap I think that we had on, maybe what's changing it. Let's make the lighting up on top. Let's just change the opacity there a little bit. What was that with the matte cap? Okay, there it is right there. Let's add just a 50 to that. Got the noise layer. We actually may even just remove the noise layer. Got the rainbow, which maybe we'll just have that. It's probably fine. And that's looking a little bit closer to what I had originally imagined. Now I just want to try something too where like, what if we scale this image up just a little bit more? No, yeah, it looked a lot better at 3. So now you can see it looks a little bit more interesting, unique, kind of like a stony type material. And I believe that if we go to this other scene over here, these other ones that we made, it should persist that same material across all scenes. Yeah, so you can even see that when you switch to the different scenes, as long as they have the same material tag, you can obviously do that. And so this looks pretty cool. one last change I want to try to this is like, what happens if we make this a little bit more, what happens if we make this image more transparent? Like, does that kind of do what I thought we were going to do? Maybe we'll add a little bit more of a glass layer to this. Have the glass be at the bottom at 25. The image be 25. There, and that's a little bit closer to what I sort of imagined. Now, let's do this directional light. And let's put this directly over top here. Let's just kind of zero everything out. Let's drag it up top right there. And we can even add an intensity to that and also its own color. So we'll add maybe that color to it. It's about what I'm looking for. And I kind of wonder what it would look like if we had a point light, just like right inside the center. That would do anything kind of interesting. Take that point light. There you can see the image or the light now is coming more directly from inside, and we have that top one as well. Kind of makes me think that we should change this top light to be matching more of that orange color. I think that's pretty interesting. And so there we go. That's more or less what I kind of had in mind to create. I even like how it's a little bit more transparent there. I mean, we can add more effects to this to make it a lot better, but that's pretty much what I was kind of going for, really. Had something in mind like that. And let's just drag around. We put that over top of the rainbow. No. Even with the Fresnel, it seems that it's kind of taking over a little bit. So I wonder if that we want to add. I know I had originally thought to make more of a bluer color, but now it's kind of looking more like it's wanting to be this color. Yeah, I tell you what, that's a lot closer to what I kind of had in mind. And it's just what it is. A lot of times designing is just making things however it feels like it wants to be made in the moment, and you know, you don't always know sometimes. You just gotta trial and error. I really like how it's just this kind of golden color. It's actually quite cool. You know, I think I actually made a cell with that. Sort of got the right vibe. And so now that we've made one of these scenes that are just like this now, we can go back to our other scene here where we just had this one, right? And these ones, they don't have the same lighting effects to it that the other one had. So let's go back to this one. We had, what, a point light there. Let's add that point light right here again. Let's make that more, actually let's make that directly in the center again. And we had this directional light. Let's copy that. Let's delete this old one and make a new directional light. Let's take both of these that I just made and we'll group these together. And again, let's zero it out. Now, I wanted to kind of do something pretty cool here with the cloner. So now that we got this cloner here, we'll add this and let's make a grid of clones, but not stacked onto each other. So I think we have to change the z-axis to be just, or the y-axis to be just one layer. And then let's do 9, and 9. So we kind of got this pattern feel. Now, I actually want these to connect together on each side. And so you would assume that what you would have to do here is just like size this up. But when you size it up, it's just going to size up the parent group. And so the spacing will also size. So what you have to do here, whatever one that you're applying the cloner to, so let's just call this one cloner, all the ones inside of the parent object, which is this cloner now, is what actually has to be sized differently. And so you have to go in here and actually individually change these. And so we can change that to be like that. Now we got this background, this sort of cool dynamic background, and you can already see that we could do other kinds of patterns with this as well. You could do things where, like if you wanted to scale this up exactly to match, like that's pretty interesting right there. Or that's also pretty interesting. A lot of things that you can do here. I mean, you can even do one where you're basically matching it that way. So the cloner tool is one of those tools that if you perfect your parent group, you can do a lot of really interesting stuff. Like that one for this one. And there you can see, we just got basically a big little sheet of all these things. That's pretty wild. Now we got this scene 3 that we did, which basically was this one that we just did over here. Now again, let's bring in that point light exactly how it was. Let's zero this all out and get that same directional light. So let's also make sure just everything kind of is the same. So there we go. It's exactly the same. Now I kind of had an idea here. Well, what if you also want to apply the same cloner effect, but to this big large group? You'd basically do the same thing. So let's add a cloner to this grid here. And let's make the grid be like, let's say 5 by 5 by 5. Or that's pretty wild, actually. Let's do 3 by 3 by 3. We don't want to get too computationally heavy here. And so now that we got that, back to that same idea we had before where we had to fix the sizing of the clone, we have to go and change inside the group objects. And this kind of made me just realize that I think that there was something here where you had something like a gap, right? Or no, that wasn't existing on the clone, I don't think. So yeah, we have to go into here and change these and size these up exactly to match. Let's get a little bit closer view inside here. Particularly that part right there. And yeah, that's about what we're looking for. And so now you can see we got a big 3D object of all these things in here. So the cloner is one of those tools that is pretty underrated. If you can master how the cloner works, you can do some pretty wild stuff. And so let's just do a recap here of what we've now made. We made this one right here. Then we made this one. And then we made this one. This may be my favorite one. So the biggest thing to know when designing Spline is that lighting and materials are your friend. You basically have to play around with a bunch of things all at once, and once you kind of get a good feel for what you want, just keep on tweaking and you'll find something that you really like. And that's really the key to this. You just have to keep on being in there, doing what you love and making it work. And that's what I'm always doing in Spline. So if you want to check out more work that I've done, my Spline link will be linked in the video down below in the description and you can check it out.